Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Jen.
Good morning.
Welcome, everyone, to the Victoria Real Estate Show. Jane is on a plane in the rain, coming from Spain. Oh, my God. Okay, I just get silly when, I just get silly. Hi, we've got Jen Lowe here today, our mortgage specialist and co-host. And Jen, would you like to introduce yourself and say hi?
Yeah, good morning. I'm Jen Lowe from DLC Modern Mortgage Group, mortgage broker.
Extraordinaire, yes.
Yes, there you go.
Excellent. She's a great resource if you are looking to get into the market. We're going to talk today about how both of our industries get pretty busy at times. So we're going to talk a little bit about ways we work to maintain balance and still give our clients great service. And we'll also talk about a recent Zoocasa study that showed what it would cost you to buy a home and how long it would, not what it would cost you, but how long it would take you to save up a down payment starting from scratch and buy a home throughout some major cities, 20 cities in Canada. So some interesting stuff to talk about today. But Jen, we're going into spring and it's already starting to get busier.
Yes, lots of inquiries.
What do you have on, how do you think about your upcoming busyness and how to kind of juggle when at sometimes your phone's going to be ringing off the hook and you're just going to have to somehow manage that?
I am very anal with my systems. So
Okay.
I am one of those very organized people that I do have an assistant as well who's amazing. She makes sure I always know where all our files, what stage our files are at. And then as far as the mortgage process goes, through Dominion Lending, we've got an amazing system that kind of just, as your deal moves along from an application to final approval, there's systems would be that's how I do my best to stay organized, for sure.
I think that's the key, right? Having systems and having good supports in place allow you to be a lot more productive and keep yourself focused on the really important pieces that your clients need you to be there for. And there's a lot of other kind of sundry items that you can get other people working on to support, or that you don't have to have yourself in the weeds. I'm similar. A question though, you mentioned that Dominion has this great system. Do you tend to choose where you work, or did that factor into your decision to be there?
Most definitely. I feel very blessed and lucky that I started out with Dominion Lending over 12 years ago now, and I have not changed to a different brokerage. And with that, I've used the internal systems as opposed to having my own.
Right. We do the same in real estate. You definitely find that some brokerages, they have different models and different cost structures. And some have more support, some have less, some have really robust conveyancing systems where they can, help track some of the transactions, some have less. I haven't found any yet that really stick handle a lot. I was with one brokerage at one point where they managed much of the listing side. When you list a home, they would take care of arranging photography and putting together marketing packages and so forth. And that was actually quite a good. It created consistency within the brokerage and created a lot more, availability of time for other things. Because I find for myself, and I think probably for a lot of realtors, listing a home, that push just before it's going live, and especially the day that it goes live, there's a lot of sundry little things to do that add up. And if you already have some other draws on your time, and just before this meeting, somebody was texting me, can we get into this house? Can we do this? Can we do that? And definitely having some supports in place is important. Um, and even with supports in place, it's, you can get so busy that you sometimes have to decide on, who are you going to work with? Like, what is your, are you going to refer business away? Um, because you just know your capacity is you're at capacity or beyond capacity, or getting near it if you start to recognize it's getting busy.
Setting those boundaries, and I mean, it comes with experience too. I definitely
Mm-hmm.
know, or I've gotten a feel for, when you get those phone calls, well, I'd really like to meet you in person before we do anything else. And no, if you're not willing and able to provide your information and complete an application, we need to go through that first.
Yeah, there's a sort of there's a acronym, they call it CITO, CITO,
Okay.
in our industry as well, or at least amongst some schools of thought, and that is come into the office.
Yes.
If people call you up out of the blue and say, "Hey, I want to work with you," or "Hey, can you show me this property?" Um, there's if they're not willing to come into the office to meet with you, um, they're just in a hurry. They probably, I mean, quite often people already have a realtor and they don't want to bother them, and they're calling you, and just you're going to be sort of a pickup realtor for that day. Well, their realtor's on vacation, and then they'll go
Yes.
back to their realtor and so forth. If people aren't willing to put in a little bit of effort on their side, it's really hard for us to get putting our own efforts into. And I think people think that we're just sitting there waiting for the phone to ring, and some of us are when it's slow times. But I have said to colleagues many times, and I found this so true. Um, the business that we choose to take on, it can be the difference between running, the tail wag the dog and running around like a chicken with your head cut off, because you're chasing people who are not really respecting your time and energy.
Yes.
And it's not giving you time and energy for the people who do legitimately want to work with you, and you have a good relationship with, and you can really, really serve. So if it's not a good connection and you're not able to serve people, it's probably best to cut that loose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
I found for myself, I've been on a bit of a health kick lately. I mean, I can't say that I'm super. I've become a lot more disciplined in myself as I've gotten older, in terms of making sure I maintain some regular regimen of getting sweaty, and
Yeah.
um, it just really helps in the day. If I've sort of gotten some of that additional energy out, I'm a lot more calm. I'm a lot more stable. I'm not just. I think if you've done something for yourself in the day, it's a lot easier to give to others as well. Do you
That's
find?
so true, but it's so hard to do
Yeah,
that when you are so busy, right? Like,
exactly.
right? All of a sudden, it's like, oh, I've got to keep working. Well, you actually really should take a break. My thing is I listen to a podcast and I take my dog for a walk, and
Nice.
and then I get back and I'm just, yeah, you literally are just that much more productive.
There are so many studies, and even when I was in school, and my parents who wanted the best for me, my dad has always been really, he likes to send me information about things, and he there's a lot of studies that say, you cannot just sit and cram for a test for a bunch of hours, but if you take a break, every half an hour, 5 minutes, get up and walk around, you're going to be so much more productive than trying to just slam through something and just do it all and be superhuman. And
Very true.
I observe my partner in this, and she's in a different industry, but you know if you are not getting up and taking a walk or having a sip of water or anything like that, you're just not getting you're not doing good service to yourself or your clients. And I don't think we show up really well for our clients when we're stressed and tired and distracted.
Yeah, most definitely.
So, and I too, it's funny because I really love systems, and I have systems that I have been building over the years, and I have a lot of great feedback from clients who they receive emails that are timely. that are relevant to the stage that they're at. They receive updates. We connect the right people at the right time. There's reminders and checklists for researching property when there's an offer in place or when we're listing a property. But there's always this thing in the back of my mind that we can do more, we can do better. There's got to be a better way to do this. And technology is our friend, but it's also a bit of a behemoth these days. I find I'm spending a lot more time sometimes in systems than helping people.
Yeah, that's interesting. It is something that in getting certain things set up, and it takes so much time to do that. But and in the
Yeah.
end, does it actually save time or cause
I think
more challenges?
yeah. I've said many times, like, I will spend 2 hours to save 5 minutes if I know I can save that 5 minutes over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And also, you know, that 2 hours, you might have a big gap and not much going on in that 2 hours where you can spend that time. And there are times in this business, I don't know about you, but in real estate, where 5 minutes can be really, really, really precious if you can get something done where there's, you know, quite often I'll be out with a client and we'll show a property to them. And I don't know if they're going to be wanting to buy it or not. And I may have other clients that I've got to meet with afterwards to show properties and the listing appointments and various other things. But after showing that property, when they say, oh, we love this and we want to write an offer, and then you look at the listing and they're looking at offers that afternoon at 4, you don't have time unless you have systems.
Yes.
You know,
it becomes the priority. Yeah.
Exactly. So do you drop everything else you were going to do in that day, or in order to serve these people, or can your system support you by sending a quick message to your assistant saying, can you please prepare an offer? And they've got checklists and they know what to do. And they can put it together, and then you can circle back, and that's where spending that 2 hours before is so valuable, because that 2 hours wasn't as valuable as the 5 minutes that you can do now. Yeah, so I mean, I'm curious to know how other people, if anyone's watching, find their own ways of finding balance in real estate or in their lives. My business partner in real estate at the Vibe Real Estate Group, before every meeting, we sit down and we actually meditate for 5 minutes. So just sort of clear the plate before we have, you know, a meeting or discussion. And it really helps to focus our conversations. It really helps us to get our egos out of the way and just start fresh, as opposed to sort of jumping into it with maybe agendas that are, you know, not as productive. So we found that's pretty helpful. Yeah, it's a bit funny. It looks really funny at the office when we're like in the office in one of the meeting rooms that have big glass doors, and we're just sort of sitting there both like, you know, home.
Having a meeting.
Silence. Having a meeting in silence. Yeah. And it's funny because we've kind of gotten away from that a little bit lately, because, you know, again, you start to feel the pressure. And like you said, you start to feel the pressure, and then you start to realize, oh, I'm too busy for this. I don't have time for this. And then that stuff all falls apart. And then you find that you're not taking care of yourself, and you've forgotten who you are in all of this.
Well, one of the biggest challenge, I mean, one thing that's going to be coming up in the mortgage broker world is FinTrack. So I know you report to FinTrack. Well, that's coming down the pipeline for us in October, and it's nerve-wracking. Okay, what does that look like? How long, you know, is that going to add for each application, timing, what, you know, just all the, what do you have to complete and everything. And there goes my system. I got to create it.
Right. Okay. So for folks who don't know what that is, FinTrack is the Canadian government is tracking the ID and our interactions with our clients, because they want to try to put a lid on money laundering and terrorist financing. So when we meet new clients, we need to ensure that they are who they say they are, and we need to take ID from them. There's been a lot of cases too of people who are scamming and saying that they are someone who they're not when they're and I've had colleagues who have listed homes and signed listing agreements and marketed homes that actually did not belong to the person who they said they were. And luckily, in my colleague's case, that got nipped in the bud early, but not early enough that it didn't it was up on live on market. It was somebody else's home.
Wow.
So so this is important that we do ensure who we are working with are actual legitimate people, and there are tools in place for it. And so Jen asked about or look into, and I'll share this with you later, the Fin Tracker app. There's also one called Really Trusted. But these apps, you can scan people's ID instead of having to data entry it so quickly when they're in front of you. And there's also some remote identification processes, and there's some cost to that, but the cost is worth that time and effort. So it uses some other systems for making sure that you've done your FinTrack obligations. And that goes back to systems and balance, because the more tools we have available to us, the better we can sort of save our client. Like ultimately, it's about saving our clients time too. Like nobody wants us to be grasping at straws and trying to, figure out our systems on the fly.
And protecting the clients as well, right? Yeah, like from our standpoint with the FinTrack, and just speaking of a recent issue or challenge that I've had this past little while here, clients' down payment verification. We're looking at bank statements. We're looking for large deposits, and all that will be reported to FinTrack. I believe the lenders already do that, but now they're going to be requiring the mortgage brokers to do that as well. One thing, clients, I'm protecting your privacy. I completely understand. You don't want, or you don't feel that a lender needs to know that you've gone to Tim Hortons 10 times and Starbucks 15 times, whatever. And frankly, the lender doesn't care about that. You cannot black out any transactions on the statements that you provide.
Oh, I see. Right. So if there's some transactions that you might feel are a little private.
Yeah. You don't want them to know, but
yeah,
you want them to lend you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Unfortunately, they do not want a statement that has blacked out transactions.
Right. Yeah.
One of my
that it's all about client communication as well. And again, that goes back to, in the end, taking it back to the topic of balance, in the end, being able to articulate to clients why we're doing things saves and get them on board, saves everyone some time and energy. So we have to take information from people when they are bringing their deposit in for their purchase. So after they've agreed to purchase a home and go deliver the deposit, we now need to get from them the institution that they were banking with, the bank account number, the date that it happened, the form of the funds that came through, and collect that information. And that to me that's a lot of, it's your private banking information. And yet we need to collect that. And if we don't collect that, there are big fines to realtors and the brokerages for not conforming to the FinTrack requirements. So if we can't collect it, we need to make a report that we weren't able to collect it and submit that report. And it's just like, now we're getting away from.
Yes.
But yes. But the point is that if we can, so I have a standard form that I send out, letting people know, and I let people know in advance, well in advance, that this is going to be expected and coming, so that they aren't surprised by it. And if there are any concerns, we can talk about it in advance. And that, again, helps me to balance all of the needs that I have in my business with clients' privacy and their expectations. So let's talk quickly about what happened last week in real estate. Look at a little bit at the stats, and let's look at that Zoocasa report. So let's just have a quote. Let's take down that Zoocasa thing. There it is. So I will talk on the right-hand one, Jen, and I'll let you, if you'd like to talk. Jane usually takes this role, but let's get you sharing the weight here. So I'll start on the right-hand one, the Market Watch. This is what's happened literally in the last week. We've had 281 properties go live on the MLS, 168 properties pending. So more than a 50% ratio of pending to new listings. So that's showing that the market is probably heating up a bit, because we've seen that number lower in the past. Still seeing a lot of price decreases at 85 in the last week. 3 properties increased in price. That's often because somebody gets a decimal point wrong when they enter the listing and then have to fix it. 2 properties came back on market that had been taken off market. 135 properties transacted. 26 properties expiring, so about 10, round figure 10% versus the new listings. So if you list a home based on this stat, 1 in 10 chance it's not going to sell during your listing period. 3 properties were withdrawn.
Is the listing period normally 3 months or 6 months? Or does it
can depend, and it often depends on the type of property as well. So I find, every agent will have a difference. It used to be that the real estate board required a minimum 60-day listing contract. I don't remember if that is still the case. So I usually request a minimum 3 months listing contract. I prefer more. And, it's a discussion with your clients. If the average days on market is 10 days, then a 30-day listing, if it was allowed, would be fine. Because you've got a really strong chance of selling a home. But if the average days on market if we were in a really quite a buyer's market and really slow market, you might need a 6-month to 1-year listing just to have a good chance of selling a property. Or if it's just different categories of property in different areas may take longer to sell too. So that's all part of the conversation. I've seen listings that are over a year long.
Right.
Yeah, that was a great question. Thank you.
Okay. Well, so the looking at the current month to date for March versus last year, we've got net unconditional sales of 446 versus 590 for the whole month of March last year. Is that right? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And then new listings, 1,084 versus 1,118 in March 2023. And active listings, 2,655 versus 1,970 in 2023. So a lot more active listings.
So our inventory is definitely up quite significantly. We're going to definitely, I think by the end of this month, have more new listings, especially because this stat is from Monday. And here we are Thursday. So that stat should overcome for the new listings last year. Net unconditional sales, though, may not quite reach it. So we would have had more sales last year. We'll see. I do think that because we've got Easter coming up, Easter weekend, I know that there's a lot of more activity I'm expecting to see in April after this long weekend. A lot of people have been waiting for the long weekend to end before they get into stuff. Okay, so we're talking about this down payment savings guide that Zoocasa put out. One of my colleagues posted this on Facebook, and I saw it and stole it. I thought this was a great conversation piece. And what it's talking about is if you are saving up from zero based on you having the average household income buying an average home in this town, how long would it take you to save up the minimum down payment in order to buy a home? And Jen, any comments?
And it's buying a single family home. So the average single family home price in the different provinces, as opposed to a condo or a townhome or what have you.
Right. Good point. So if you were looking for a condo, you could maybe half this time frame.
It's also what's interesting when you dive into the website there. It's looking at the median total household income as well. And when you look at, I mean, it's got 60,000 as the median household income for Victoria versus like Saskatchewan is 79,000. Right. And the average single family home price in Regina, it's got it at 282,000 versus in Victoria, 919,000. So
great.
That's definitely where it's going to take you. It's got minimum 18 years in Victoria to save for the minimum down payment to get into a single family home here in Victoria.
Right. Yeah. So when you're looking at these, you can make more money in Regina than you can make in Victoria on average, and buy a home in a much shorter time period.
Yes.
And you're living in Regina.
Right. Yeah. What's the weather like there today?
Yeah. Let's maybe we should look that up. But people, I mean, the thing is, Victoria is not all that. I mean, people like to be here, and it's a beautiful city. But there's wonderful places throughout Canada to go, and not everyone can afford to be here. The one thing that this doesn't really take into account is, if you scrimp and save to buy a home, let's say in Regina, you're also not going to see the property appreciation you would if you were buying in a larger market like Vancouver or Ontario or Victoria. So it's one of those, if you can get there, you can start to ride that real estate wave, I guess. But a lot of people in Victoria are trying to save up to buy a home, and I know my children look at the affordability in Victoria and think, I'm never going to be able to afford a place. And here it is. So for Victoria, it says the average time to save would be 18 years, which is better than Vancouver, which would take more than half your life to save up, 50.6 years to save up a down payment for Greater Vancouver.
That's pretty depressing.
Yeah, really depressing. And this is where, intergenerational wealth and all of that comes in, where, in Victoria, it's the people who grew up here and their family has property here, and the children are going to inherit that property or already have help from their parents to get into the marketplace, that allows this to continue on as a high-priced place to live.
Which actually
Regina.
To one thing, there's been a lot of news about lots of people here in Victoria. Their families do help them. They co-sign their mortgage, for example, to help them get into the housing market. And our federal government has put in a requirement, and the deadline is April 1st for it's referred to, and I'm not a professional with this. This is, you would want to talk to your accountant, but if you have co-signed a mortgage for your children, definitely reach out to your accountant, because that needs to be reported to the government as a form of a bare trust. Apparently it's referred to.
Okay.
It's an interesting requirement.
Interesting. Okay. So I mean, we're finding, and this is maybe a topic for another day, and maybe we want to be careful about it, but we're finding there's a lot more tracking, I guess, of data
Yes.
And I think that's because, with AI or just with technology, government now has a much easier time collecting and finding out information about, what we are doing with our money and where we're putting it. And by tracking that and by legislating things, they're, attempting to control, for better or for worse, elements of what happens. So we can't expect anymore to, there may be some changes in the way that things are done. For example, the whole anti-flipping tax now, it's much easier probably to track someone who bought and sold a home within a year. Whereas maybe in the past, that was something that would have required a lot more proactive tracking, going to look for it. But now the data is all very, very easily accessible. So government likes data and likes to be able to track that stuff easily. So it was interesting to me that the Zukasa report didn't include the territories up north. They just went with the provinces. And I'm actually quite curious to know, about the property values and the income averages and how long it would take you to save in the Yukon, for example.
Actually, funny enough, I've done a few mortgages in the Yukon.
Tell
I
us.
was hesitant because you're licensed in your province only to do mortgages. So I thought I would need to be referring to a different broker in the Yukon. However, learned that they don't have those kind of requirements or legislation. You don't have to be licensed in the Yukon or to do mortgages.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, this is great. And honestly, it's a pretty hot market.
Okay, folks. So Jen Lowe, Yukon mortgage specialist.
There you go.
Reach out anytime.
Yes, I can help you out.
So what was that like? Was there anything different about that than?
No, I mean, I have to admit, I enjoyed looking at the listings, a lot of snow, etc. But as far as the price point, I mean, I would say it was pretty high, like higher than I thought, for a single family home. And the rental market is huge. It was interesting. Yeah. I've done 2 mortgages in the Yukon in the last year.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've seen, there's some interesting lifestyle up there, I'm sure. And it's something that's not on a lot of people's radar, but it's still there's probably a lot of work up there. There's definitely a lot of work in northern BC. And, none of this report looks at what it would cost you to buy something in Burns Lake or whatever, but there's a lot of land up northern BC that you can buy a home for a couple $100,000 or less, probably less even in some areas. I know even on northern Vancouver Island, you can buy single family homes in some of the smaller towns for $300,000.
Yes.
And they're very remote, but that's just coming from an area where this Zukasa report says the average Victoria value is $919,777 for a single family home price as of January 2024. And yet that's Greater Victoria, because the city of Victoria, the average is definitely, you're not going to find a decent home in that price point. So
a single family home. Yeah.
Not a single family, no. And condos up on northern Vancouver Island for $100,000. And so there's options out there. I think the thing what's interesting when we look at this information here, if you can get into one of these higher price markets and save up and hold, then you can leverage, or you can, I've had clients who have owned in Victoria, bought in Victoria, and then, this one example was from a number of years ago, but they bought in Victoria, held their home for maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years, had a lot more equity in it than they had before, had young children, and decided that they were going to just sell take that equity and go buy for cash, lose their mortgage, like sell off, no longer have a mortgage, go back to the East Coast, to Halifax, buy a home for cash in Halifax, bank $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 as well, and just live mortgage-free, debt-free, raise their children over the next 20 years if they're frugal. And essentially, they've used their Victoria home as a bank to
It's a retirement
live
plan.
a lifestyle. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure once their children are grown that they're not going to be, they would still need to be working. They'd still need to be supporting themselves at some point. And they've taken themselves away from that area where they're going to be able to rely on their home for retirement or income, where in Victoria, I think a lot of people look to their home as a bank. I know I have in the past as well, before I was in real estate, and even at times like, oh, my home went up in value more than I make a year in income at that point in my life. So Brittany Todson just made a note. She just, let's just throw this into the chat. She's got a friend doing that right now. So she's selling, her friend is selling here in Victoria and moving to PEI. Yeah.
I went to PEI last summer, actually, for my son's field lacrosse national championship. It's beautiful there. Very similar to here, but just beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why, like, it's kind of like, it's the East Coast equivalent of Vancouver Island, right? I've never been there. I would love to go. And somehow I've never, going back to that talk about balance, trying to find time to explore and get to know the world.
Yes.
Canada is so big, and I have really, really scratched the surface of it. Explored BC a fair bit, but not much of the rest of Canada. So yeah,
I'd love to get up to the Yukon.
Yes, I have been there, and
have you?
Northern BC. So in my 20s, my friends and I, we a Honda Civic, okay, a 1989 Honda Civic, the three of us, and all our camping gear, threw it in the back of the truck, back of the car, and drove east through to Jasper, and then north up along the Alaska. It was the 50th anniversary of the Alaskan Highway, and we drove the up northern BC and up into Yukon, and then through to Alaska.
Oh wow! So, in the dead of winter,
and then back. No, summer.
Just kidding.
Yeah. No. But we saw moose and bear and fox and mountain goats.
Oh, right on.
We fished and we camped and we had a great time. Northern BC is just so gorgeous. I actually preferred it to Alaska. Yeah. Anyway, but there's working and living and making a living, and again, Victoria, Vancouver, this is where people want to be. There's that efficiency in living in a big city where you can get access to good coffee when you want it, or restaurants and entertainment and so forth. But there's also a lot to be said for a lifestyle that's a lot more rustic and simple. And again, it's that balance between the rat race and living a life that's intentional and complete, right? So a lot of people come to the big city to make their way and try to save as quick as they can, and then maybe they can save up for a down payment more quickly in a center where they can make a good income, and then go and move to an area where, like Halifax, Regina, northern BC, where they've actually jumped the gun, jumped the queue.
Yes.
So folks, if you're curious about what it requires and some tips for saving a down payment and all that stuff, give Jen a call. There are certain things you can do to help boost your credit, I'm sure, and there's things you can do to kind of streamline the process. There's things definitely that the lenders look for, both for the positive and negatives that you might want to be aware of. They can help to maybe shave off some of that 18-year average savings.
Yep.
Right?
Consolidating debts is a big one. Yeah.
Or maybe, call myself or, my colleague Jane, our co-host, and ask about, maybe some plans around, you do have some savings. Should you, and talk to your investment advisor as well, but should you take those savings and put them into a condo, even though you're eventually saving for a house because you can leverage that money? Should you, let's look at some different options available to you that might be able to, again, get you into a property a little bit faster and get you into that single family home and up the property ladder. Anything else to add, Jen, or should we give people the rest of their day off?
Well, one other, just with different savings options, first-time home buyers options. There's a first-time home buyers savings account. You could utilize your RRSP towards purchasing a home. Some people get RSP loans. Then you've got that. You do have a loan payment, but there's a good strategy there of getting a down payment quicker.
Right. Yeah, and these are all really, there's a lot of different moving parts with that. So talking to someone like Jen really can help identify those things. And there's recently the government, was it $8,000 a year, non-RRSP, but you can be putting that aside, and it's non-taxable. So the sooner you start that account, the sooner you can start building up that non-taxable account for buying a home. And that one you don't have to pay back, because if you use the RSPs, you have to pay them back over 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah. So yes, okay, good. Jen, thank you for this. This was fun. And thanks anybody and everybody for watching. And thank you for your comments, Brittany. And we will see everyone next week.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.